She grew up above a hardware store in Corona, Queens. Her parents were Hungarian and Czech immigrants who barely spoke English, crammed into a small apartment with 8 children. There was no glamour, no fashion training, no connections to the world of beauty. She changed her name, rewrote her past, and told stories about her childhood that were more dream than reality. You would think a poor Queens girl with no college degree, no startup capital, and a homemade face cream recipe would never build a billion-dollar empire. But Estée Lauder would create a company worth over $130 billion today. She would put her products on the faces of queens, first ladies, and Hollywood legends. And she would do it by giving away samples for free at a time when every competitor called her insane. So how did a girl who mixed face creams in her kitchen sink become the most powerful woman in the history of the beauty industry? To find out, we have to go back to 1908. July 1st, 1908. If you are new here, subscribe and hit the bell so you never miss a story like this one. And if this one moves you, share it with someone who needs to hear it. Josephine Esther Mentzer was born in Corona, Queens, in a neighborhood that smelled of machine oil and ambition. Corona was not glamorous. It was a working-class patchwork of Italian, Jewish, and Eastern European immigrants who had crossed an ocean searching for something better and found a different kind of hard. Her father, Max Mentzer, ran a hardware store on the ground floor of their building, and the family lived directly above it. Her mother, Rose, was a Hungarian immigrant who carried faint traces of elegance in the way she moved through the world, in the way she pressed her clothes and pinched her cheeks for color and made every small thing feel like it mattered. Estée was the youngest in a blended family of 9. Space was not a concept the Mentzer household understood, but what existed in that crowded apartment was a mother who, without ever saying the words, taught her daughter that how you present yourself to the world is a choice you make every single day. By the time Esther was a teenager, she was obsessed with skin, with the way light moved across a well-tended face, with the idea that the surface a woman showed the world could be engineered, controlled, and perfected. She would study herself in the mirror with the focus of a scientist. Her friends found it strange. Her mother understood completely. If this story is already hitting different, go ahead and like this video right now. It helps us keep making content like this. Everything changed when a man named John Schatz arrived. He was Rose's brother, a cosmetic chemist who had fled Hungary and landed in New York with a mind full of formulas and a suitcase full of ambition. He set up a small laboratory behind his niece's school and began making creams and lotions he sold from a pushcart in the neighborhood. Young Esther was transfixed. She followed her uncle everywhere, watching him measure and mix, asking questions no one else thought to ask. Why does this ingredient cause the skin to tighten? What makes this cream absorb faster than the others? John Schatz had no children of his own, and he recognized something rare in his niece: a genuine curiosity, real intelligence, and a hunger that went far beyond a teenager's usual interests. He taught her how to emulsify oils and water, how to stabilize a cream so it would not separate, which botanical extracts could improve skin texture, and how scent could lift a product from functional to luxurious. For years, the laboratory became Esther's second home, and she was not just learning chemistry. She was absorbing a philosophy that a woman's face, properly cared for, was a canvas. That beauty was not an accident of birth, but a discipline, a practice, something you could teach and sell and share with the world. She began experimenting on her own, mixing creams in her mother's kitchen, adjusting formulas until the texture and the scent met her exacting standards. She tested them on anyone who would sit still long enough, and neighbors, teachers, the women who came into her father's hardware store. People noticed. Women told their friends. The girl above the hardware store made something that actually worked. Esther Mentzer knew that a girl with her name and her background faced certain ceilings in the world she wanted to enter. The beauty industry in the 1930s was aspirational. An aspiration required a mythology. It required a name that sounded like a story people wanted to believe. So Esther Mentzer became Estée Lauder. The first name was a softened, glamorized version of Esther. The last name came from her husband, Joseph Lauder, whom she married in 1930. Joseph was steady and practical, where Estée was restless and visionary. They divorced in 1939 and remarried in 1942, pulled back together by something neither of them could name. Joseph handled the financial and operational side of the business. Estée handled everything else. But the transformation was more than a name. Estée constructed an origin story that was more aspirational than accurate. She hinted at aristocratic European roots, implied a childhood surrounded by refinement and elegance, painted herself as someone born into beauty rather than someone who had fought her way toward it. None of it was strictly true. But it was true in the way that mattered to Estée. It was the story of who she intended to become. She understood, long before marketing became a science, that a brand needs a mythology, that the story behind the product is as important as the product itself. And she was determined that her story would be one worth believing. In the late 1930s, Estée began selling her uncle's formulas out of beauty salons across New York City. She would arrive with her jars and her conviction, set up at a salon chair, and demonstrate her products on whoever would let her. She was not shy, and she was not deferential. She approached every woman with the certainty of someone who knew something you needed to hear. Her technique was unlike anything the beauty industry had seen. She did not just hand you a jar, she touched your face. She applied the cream herself, working it gently into your skin, narrating as she went. This feels different, doesn't it? Notice how your skin drinks it in. She was selling the experience, not just the product. She moved through hotels and resorts, setting up informal demonstrations wherever women gathered. The Roni Plaza in Miami Beach, summer resorts in the Catskills, and hair salons from Brooklyn to the Upper East Side. She would corner women at the hairdresser and convince them to let her touch their faces. Her son Leonard would later say that his mother could walk into a room full of strangers and within an hour have every woman feeling like she had made a new best friend. This was not manipulation, it was genuine. Estée actually believed in what she was selling. She believed that beauty was a form of self-respect, and she wanted every woman she met to feel that. But selling from salon chairs and resort lobbies had a ceiling, and Estée Lauder was not a woman who accepted ceilings. In 1948, Estée Lauder walked into Saks Fifth Avenue and asked to see the buyer. She had been preparing for this meeting for years, mentally rehearsing every objection, every question, every possible opening. She brought her products, her conviction, and nothing else. The buyer listened politely and said no. The brand was too small, too unknown, too unproven. Saks carried the established prestige houses, the names women already recognized and trusted. There was simply no room at the counter for an unknown Queens girl with a jar of face cream. Estée did not accept this. She went home and doubled down on her strategy. Shortly after the rejection, she discovered that Saks was hosting a charity luncheon for some of its best customers. Estée attended. She worked the room with the intensity of someone who had nothing to lose. By the time the event ended, she had collected enough verbal interest to justify a conversation. She called the Saks buyer and reported that she had received orders worth $800. Could he possibly give her counter space to fill those orders? He said yes. She sold out in 2 days. In 2 days, every product she had placed at that Saks counter was gone. Women had been waiting for something exactly like this, and word spread through the store faster than any advertisement could have managed. The buyer called her back. He wanted more product and a permanent counter. Estée Lauder had arrived. She understood something in that moment that she would spend the rest of her career proving. You do not wait for the door to open. You find the side entrance, and if there is no side entrance, you build one yourself. The beauty industry in the late 1940s operated on simple transactional logic. You walked in, you paid for a product, you walked out. Free was not part of the vocabulary. So every established brand believed that giving something away devalued it. Estée Lauder believed the opposite. She believed that if a woman tried her products, she would become a customer for life. The challenge was getting the product into women's hands. So she invented the gift with purchase. Buy one product and receive another as a gift, or receive a sample of something new with every order. Her competitors thought she was destroying her margins, training customers to wait for free offers, and undermining the brand's luxury positioning. What they did not understand was what Estée understood instinctively. Trust is the most valuable currency in beauty, and trust is built through experience, not through advertising. She did not have money for splashy magazine campaigns. She had product, and she had the certainty that if you let a woman experience what her creams felt like on her skin, the sale would take care of itself. She was right. The gift with purchase became one of the most widely imitated strategies in retail history. Every department store beauty counter in the world eventually adopted some version of it. Estée Lauder invented it in her kitchen, born from necessity, executed with genius. In 1953, Estée Lauder introduced a product that would completely transform the company and the entire fragrance industry. She called it Youth Dew, and it was technically a bath oil that doubled as a perfume. Before Youth Dew, women in America did not buy their own perfume. They received it as gifts from men, from husbands or fathers or suitors, on Christmas or birthdays or anniversaries. Perfume was a luxury that women waited to be given. Estée found this idea intolerable. She believed that a woman should not have to wait for a man to give her access to beauty or luxury. She should be able to give it to herself. Youth Dew was priced affordably enough that a woman could buy it with her own money without it feeling like an extravagance. And because it was technically a bath oil, women could justify the purchase in a way that a pure perfume might not allow. It sold 500,000 units within a year. Within a few years, Youth Dew was generating more revenue than all of Estée's other products combined. It fundamentally changed the economics of the company and the psychology of the beauty consumer. Women discovered they could buy their own luxuries, that they did not need to wait for permission. Estée had not just created a product. She had given women a new way of thinking about themselves. What separated Estée Lauder from every other beauty entrepreneur of her era was something that could not be bottled or packaged or replicated. It was the touch. Estée believed that the most powerful thing she could do for a customer was lay her hands on that customer's face. She would not send saleswomen to the counter and walk away. She would stand there herself, take a woman's face gently in her hands, and demonstrate exactly how to apply the product. She would say, "You have beautiful skin." And she would mean it every single time. There was something in the way she touched a woman's face that communicated absolute belief in the product, belief in the customer, and belief that the 15 seconds of attention she was giving this woman's face was the most important transaction happening anywhere in the world at that moment. She trained her saleswomen in this philosophy with a rigor that bordered on obsessive. Touch the face, make eye contact, speak to the skin you can see and not the skin you imagine, call out what is beautiful before you suggest any improvement, and make every woman feel that she is already enough and that you are simply helping her become more so. This was not a sales script. It was a philosophy of human dignity dressed up as retail strategy. Women who experienced an Estée Lauder counter demonstration came back not just for the products, but for the way it felt to have someone look at them that carefully. In 1960, my Estée Lauder walked into Galeries Lafayette in Paris and negotiated counter space. This was an act of almost incomprehensible audacity. French women did not want American beauty products. French women believed they already knew everything there was to know about beauty, and French retailers believed the same. But Estée had something the French had not encountered before. She had certainty. She spoke about her products with the authority of someone who had spent 30 years studying skin, and she was right, because the products worked. Within a year, the Galeries Lafayette counter was one of her strongest performing locations anywhere in the world. From Paris, the expansion became relentless. London, Milan, Tokyo. By the 1970s, Estée Lauder was one of the first American luxury brands to pursue a truly global strategy at a time when most American companies were content to dominate at home. She understood something important about luxury, that it travels, that a woman in Tokyo has the same aspirations as a woman in New York, that the desire to feel beautiful and cared for is not a Western phenomenon or an American invention. It is as universal as anything human beings experience. In 1979, Estée Lauder became the first American cosmetics brand to open a counter in the Soviet Union, setting up inside a Moscow department store at a moment when the Cold War made such a move feel almost like diplomacy. She was asked why she would attempt such a thing. Her answer was simple and direct. Russian women want to be beautiful too. By the 1960s and 70s, Estée understood that a single brand, no matter how powerful, could not capture every woman. Different women wanted different things, different price points, different aesthetics, different stories. So she did something that no beauty entrepreneur of her era had attempted at scale. She built multiple brands under one corporate roof, each with its own identity and its own customer. Clinique launched in 1968, born from a Vogue magazine article asking whether beautiful skin could be created rather than inherited. Clinique said yes, through 3 simple steps presented in sterile green and white packaging that looked more like a pharmacy than a beauty counter. The saleswomen wore white lab coats and were called consultants. Everything about Clinique said science instead of luxury. It was the opposite of the Estée Lauder brand, and it was a masterstroke. Women who found the flagship brand too classic or too traditional found exactly what they needed at Clinique. And both brands lived under the same corporate roof. Prescriptives followed, origins followed. MAC Cosmetics was acquired in 1994, bringing an entirely different aesthetic and a younger, more diverse customer. Bobbi Brown joined the portfolio in 1995. La Mer, the legendary moisturizer born from a scientist's obsession with healing his own burn-scarred skin, was acquired in 1995. Each brand was strategic, each one plugging a gap in the market that Estée had identified years before anyone else saw it. The Estée Lauder Companies was not a beauty brand. It was a beauty empire designed to have something for every woman alive. There is a version of Estée Lauder that history tends to present. I'm the perfectly coiffed executive in pearls and cashmere, the polished businesswoman who lunched with heads of state and dined with royalty. That version is real. It is also incomplete. The real Estée Lauder was ferocious. She was relentlessly demanding of the people around her and twice as demanding of herself. She worked with a focus that could intimidate even her most capable executives. She never truly separated from the business, not even in her later years when her son Leonard had taken over operational control. She would still call the office, still arrive at counter demonstrations unannounced to watch how her products were being presented, still correct a saleswoman on the spot if she touched a customer's face the wrong way. She was not easy. Her competitors feared her. Some of her employees struggled to keep up with the standards she set. But those who worked closest with her said the same thing consistently. She made them believe that what they were doing mattered, that selling a face cream was not a small thing, that helping a woman feel beautiful was an act of genuine significance. She had a phrase she returned to throughout her life. She said, "I have never worked a day in my life without selling. If I believe in something, I sell it, and I sell it hard." She also fought battles that never made the fashion pages, breaking into department stores in an era when the beauty industry was run by male executives who did not take a queen's girl seriously, required a specific kind of stubborn resilience. Being a woman in business in the 1950s and 60s meant that every deal took longer and every rejection carried extra weight, because sometimes it was not just about the product. Sometimes it was about whether anyone was willing to take a woman seriously at all. Estée Lauder outlasted all of it. Estée Lauder passed away on April 24, 2004 in Manhattan. She was 95 years old. By then, the company she had built from a jar of face cream in her kitchen had revenues of over $5 billion annually and was the largest prestige beauty company in the world. She was one of the wealthiest self-made women in American history, with a personal net worth estimated at $5 billion at the time of her death. Today, the Estée Lauder companies, generates over $15 billion in annual revenue. It owns more than 25 brands, employs tens of thousands of people across more than 150 countries, and touches the lives of hundreds of millions of women every single day. Estée Lauder received the Presidential Medal of Freedom. She received the French Legion of Honor. She was the first woman to appear on the cover of Time magazine as a business leader. Time named her one of the 20 most influential business geniuses of the 20th century. She funded the Estée Lauder Company's breast cancer campaign, one of the most recognized charitable initiatives in the beauty industry, raising hundreds of millions of dollars for research and helping to make the pink ribbon a global symbol of the fight against the disease. But the numbers and the honors do not fully capture what she built. On what she built was a new idea about what women deserve. She believed that every woman, regardless of her income or background or the neighborhood she came from, deserved to look in the mirror and feel beautiful. She believed that beauty was not a luxury reserved for the privileged. It was a right. And she spent her entire life making it accessible. The girl who grew up above a hardware store in Queens, who mixed face creams in a kitchen sink, who was told by everyone that her aspirations were too large for her circumstances, who changed her name and rewrote her story and refused every ceiling that anyone tried to place above her. That girl built one of the most valuable companies in the world. She did it without a college degree. She did it without startup capital. She did it without anyone telling her it was possible, each because no one thought it was. What she had was a vision, a relentless work ethic, and an unshakable belief that every woman's face was worth her full and undivided attention. That is how a poor Queens girl created Estée Lauder. And that is why more than 20 years after her death, the brand she built is still selling the same promise she made to the very first woman she ever touched. You are already beautiful. Let me show you. If this story moved you, like this video, share it with someone who needs to hear it, and subscribe so you never miss a story like this one. We will see you in the next one.